Let's bring you the markets update now. The local bourse looks set to open to mostly positive sentiment this morning, even with a lower Tencent amid optimism over the global economic recovery. Markets have been watching for the huge fiscal stimulus to help solidify the recovery of the world's largest economy. It comes as the U.S. Federal Reserve starts contemplating easing back on its monetary policy stimulus amid rising inflation and improving labor market. For a sense of how the markets are doing at this hour, we're joined by Independent Analyst Jimmy Moyaha. Jimmy, a very good morning to you. It's a Monday, and take us through what the local markets are doing in early trade.
Morning, Xoli. So the markets have opened rather cautiously this morning, as you rightly said, looking to take the cue from the news that we heard out of the U.S. last week and the China factory activity numbers that recently came out as well. So the markets at the moment are just tentatively looking to see what the global direction is in terms of recovery and the rate of recovery. And we've seen that filter in terms of sentiment through to various other areas of the market, such as the oil market, such as the gold market, and even the currency markets.
Yeah. Oil prices, Jimmy, falling early today on worries over China's economy, with concerns compounded by a rise in oil output from OPEC producers. Take us through some of those sentiments.
Certainly. So in a nutshell, what's happening is the OPEC countries that are supplying oil have agreed to increase their supply output, and this has coincided with China's demand for oil coming down as a result of those factory activity numbers coming out. As we know, China is the second largest consumer of oil in the world, and so their demand has come down with corresponding supply from OPEC increasing, and that's just dropped the price by a couple of cents, about 70-odd cents on Brent. And so the overall sentiment around that is, as China was one of the first countries to sort of go into a recovery phase and to outline their steps to recovery and to start their economic recovery, we expected that they would continue to lead that in the short term until the U.S. or other markets caught up. And if this is a concern from China as to their slowdown in their factory activity, then this is now filtering into other markets. I mean, it is quite logical given that some of the other countries aren't recovering as quickly, and so China's output isn't being consumed as much. They're producing within their factories, they're manufacturing within their factories, but there's no end consumer to take up that supply that they're creating there. So they need to hold back on that for now until demand can catch up on that side.
Yeah. Here's something interesting, Jimmy, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I've got to tell you, I don't think it happens often. Tongaat Hewlett's remuneration committee, it's listened to the concerns of its shareholders and slashed the remuneration of its 3 top executives. Now, considering the difficulties faced by this group, this isn't particularly surprising, isn't it? It makes sense, logical sense, that is.
It certainly does, particularly after the fact that Tongaat missed their Q1 turnaround strategy. They had a debt reduction strategy in place, and they had Q1 targets to meet at the end of March. They missed that, and so part of the remuneration that was slashed was around the turnaround incentives for the executives. In total, I mean, the top 3 executives took almost a 60% slash in their remuneration. If you look at that numerically, that's about 34 million rand to top executives that was cut back there. And this is just aiding to the fact that Tongaat has been looking to or needing to save money in areas until its performance can turn around. And this is just another example of this. We have seen this start to emerge as a theme around the world in line with the global global corporate tax rates that are being proposed. We're seeing this new emerging theme around a revision of remuneration policies for higher-ending executives and that sort of thing. So this has just come out, very early talks around the G7 countries around that. But we could definitely see this as a change if going forward we start to see this where your shareholders and your companies then want to have your top executives' remuneration either curtailed, controlled, or monitored, and switched perhaps to a more incentive-based structure. Some of the companies, Tongaat is one of those that has mentioned that they want to switch it to more an incentive-based structure. And so this is not surprising given Tongaat's current positioning, but it is also in line with what we might be seeing come out in future from underperforming companies as well.
Well, I'm sure other people are applauding what this remuneration committee has done. Let's talk MTN. Over the weekend, MTN Nigeria releasing its results for the 6-month period ending June 2021. Talk us through those numbers.
Really good numbers from MTN, much like the MTN Ghana results that we saw late last week. Their revenue figures were up, their earnings per share figures were up. So MTN Nigeria performing very much in line with what Ghana did. We saw the data revenue from MTN Ghana go up. We saw the data revenue from MTN Nigeria go up. Their fintech revenues gone up as well from their mobile money side of their business. So very good numbers from MTN Nigeria to support MTN Ghana. So the MTN group should be having some really good numbers when they report their group numbers later as well.
Yeah, finally, Richard Spoor, the human rights attorney that we know him to be, has launched an application at the Financial Services Tribunal. This is to try and review the Prudential Tribunal, the Prudential Authority's decision to allow Constantia Insurance to cancel more than 5,000 life policies. What's going on here?
Well, if you remember, Xoli, this started around July of last year when there was a High Court judgment dismissing this initial application by Constantia, saying that the claims and the insurance policies were to remain valid and that there was insufficient reason as to why those policies needed to be cancelled. So it's over 5,000 claims. And Richard Spoor, as we know, is very vocal around human rights issues. And this looks to be the early beginnings of what could potentially be a class action suit if that application goes through. I mean, more than 5,200 policyholders are affected by this, and this has been an ongoing case from last year, as I said. So it'll be interesting to see if that application is granted, what the next steps are, and what Constantia's remediation or remedial suggestions will be as they go into this. So, I mean, they already lost the court case last year, and so this Prudential Authority judgment that's come in their favor might be something that could be overturned in the future. It's definitely something worth looking at given the amount of people that are being affected by it.
Jimmy Moyaha, Independent Markets Analyst, thanks indeed for your time as always and indeed for your insights.